Hello and welcome to Learn SAP Fiori Elements Professional Development course. In this course, we will cover the use of SAP Fiori Elements. Using SAP Fiori Elements, we can create SAP Fiori and SAP UI5 apps faster with a consistent UI and UX. In this course, we will start with the basic and explore the use of SAP Fiori Elements, and this course is divided into multiple different levels for you to understand the Fiori element in a step-by-step and easy manner. In the level 1 of the course, we will start exploring how to use out-of-the-box oData services like Northwind and use the front-end UI annotation to have those changes in our SAP Fiori element application. Then in the level 2, we will focus our attention on SAP CAPM application and see how annotation can be added to CAPM based services, which will be consumed by our SAP Fiori element application. Here we will see some of the popular annotations like UI line item, header info, adding object page detail, facets, both the collection and the reference facet. We will show the navigation and association relationship using the facets and what are the limitations in that. So all that we will cover within the level 2. Then we will go to the level 3 where our focus will be on SAP ABAP RESTful application, and we will add annotation to our RESTful oData services and see how in SAP Fiori Element app this annotation can be used. Then in the level 4 we will see how you can use overview page Fiori Elements and how to show data in analytics using Fiori Elements. Within this section, we will also explore how to represent dimension and how to represent measure and how the annotation can be used within the backend. So our front-end Fiori application picks that. And in the final level 5, we will see how to work with custom cars and add those to our Fiori element application. This course will be a hands-on course using SAP BAS environment in SAP BTP. I highly recommend this course for SAP developers, freelancers, managers, and architects. So join this course to learn SAP Fiori Element in simple, easy, and step-by-step manner. My name is Ajay Nayak, and I will see you in this course. Hello and welcome to SAP Fiori Element course. Within this course, our focus will be to focus on SAP Fiori Elements hands-on. Now, before we start the hands-on, we will discuss a little bit of theory where we will cover why the need of SAP Fiori Elements, and then we will discuss how many types of SAP Fiori Element apps can be created. Then we will deal in a little technical side where we will try to understand how this Fiori element actually works under the hood. And once we cover the theory, then we will go into the hands-on part where we will create some of our apps. And within these apps, we will try to see how Fiori elements can be used, and we will try to create small projects where you can understand how to use the Fiori element in your application. So let's get started. So the first question which comes into our mind is why SAP Fiori element is necessary. Now imagine there is this company, and let's say that this company is your company A. Now this company is using SAP systems and it requires some of the custom application creation as well for its custom processes or for some reporting. Now within this application, the company needs to have a consistent look and feel. So how the application actually works and how actually it looks, that needs to be consistent. Like these two cars, they are having different colors, but they look same. Their design and model both are same. So all the application within this company need to be consistent so user don't face challenges navigating from one app to other app, how to use it. So we need a consistent design and how the app actually function and how it actually looks. So both need to be consistent. So we can say the UX or the UI of the application need to be consistent. If we are creating a new application or we are creating custom reports, they need to look same. Now, once we create this application or we start to create this application, then there should be some kind of help with the pre-built code or templates so that the application development doesn't take ages. So it is faster to develop. So if there is certain custom process or some reporting, then quickly I can make the app working, so I don't have to wait for months or years for the app to come live for its usage. So with the help of templates or pre-built codes that can be possible, we can create application within matter of days or hours. So the faster development is our second requirement. Now the third requirement is that if we have an existing systems, then this application can easily integrate or talk to the system, because the system is where our data is present. So the data can be easily imported into the application, and if the application tries to change certain data, then based on the correct authorization and authentication, it can update the data as well. So these are the three requirements. The first is from the usability standpoint. The second is the total cost of building the application and the time it takes and the effort it takes. And the third is the ease of building the application from a technical angle. So this three aspect actually is fulfilled by SAP Fiori Elements. So within our Fiori Elements, we have the capability to build application which work and look consistent. So this first requirement is fulfilled, and also there are a lot of pre-built annotation, which is pre-built code, and we will also have templates, which is when you create the application, then there are standard templates. You can use the standard templates and your app development is much faster. So you also have the capability or the provision for faster development here. And within the Fiori Elements, you also have the provision of using oData, and there are two versions, the version 2 and version 4. Using version 2 and version 4 oData services, you can integrate this with SAP systems or other systems which support oData. So these are the three reasons why SAP Fiori Elements are getting used, or why the need for SAP Fiori Elements. Now let's look into how many types of Fiori Elements are there. So the second thing which we are going to discuss is what are the types or categories of SAP Fiori Element application and for what reason they are made. So the first category is viewing data. Now, when we talk about viewing multiple data, then list is one of the popular format in which we can represent multiple data points for user to have a look into individual columns which are important. Now, if the user wants to also see details of certain data points, then it can click on the data points and also go to one more page where details of that specific data point is highlighted, and this can sometimes also be referred as the detail page. So we have in list view representing certain important columns, and then if details about any specific column is required, then it can also navigate into one more page where the details are highlighted. So this is the first type of application where you have to see multiple data points in a list and navigate to see the details. Now the second category is where we have the same list, but individual lists are certain action. For example, if there is a approval request or there is certain request which require your intervention as a user of the application, you can either approve or reject. So those kind of application where certain action need to be performed on single record or multiple record. So those are having the same UI, but you have additional feature of acting over the data point or taking certain kind of decision over the data point. So those are the second category. Now within the third category, you don't want to see the list with details, or just the list also you don't need. You need the summary. So you are in a senior management and you don't have time to look into the details of the data. You have to just have a glance, and you need certain KPIs, or you need certain numbers, or you need certain graphs. So where you can have a glance and you understand what is happening within your processes or your company. So those are the second requirement, where you need kind of an overview of the data. And the fourth aspect is where you require a certain form to be filled, so that form can be processed. So certain kind of data entry or the data process entry is present. So these are the four main broad category for which you can create Fiori element application. In future, there will be more categories added to Fiori elements, but currently these are the main categories which are present. Now, what are the technical names here? So if we see the technical names, the name for category 1, which is just listing the data and also have the capability to navigate to the details, is called the list report page. And when you are also creating a detail view which highlights or provides extra information about a single row of the data, then those are called the object pages. So you will see in your Fiori element application that we have list, and then on clicking on certain list item or a single list item, then you go to a detail page which are called the object pages. So this is one of the most common scenarios where you will see the use of Fiori element is done. Now the second category is where you have to do also certain kind of processing or action over the data element, then over the individual data element or multiple data elements, which looks like in a list format, are called the work list pages. So this is also a very common Fiori element which is used. Now the third category is for managers or for seeing the glance or overview of the data, which is using KPIs or analytics or charts. So when you are using KPIs, then you can use the overview page Fiori elements. And when you want specific charts to be used within your application, then you use the analytical page Fiori elements. Now there is also this form entry page for creating forms within your Fiori elements or data entry processes within your Fiori elements. And there is also one more category, which is the fifth category, where you have your custom application development capabilities, where you can create SAP UI5 custom application, and you can also use Fiori element together. So this is the fifth category where you can customize the UI based on SAP UI5 framework, and you can have your own UIs based on the UI5 components, or using the UI5 components, you can customize it as per your requirement. Okay, so this is the overview on what are the different types we will be using Fiori elements, what are the different categories the Fiori element apps will be used, or what are the different types of Fiori elements are present. So we will just summarize this once more before we actually move to next section. So the first is when you need a user to view one or more record and navigate to see details, then we use the list report pages. When the action is also required or some kind of process on the individual record or multiple record need to be done, then the work list page Fiori elements is used. When the user wants KPI information with the help of cards, then we will be using overview pages. Now here, what are the cards and how the KPI data is put in the cards, all that we will see in the hands-on section. Now the analytical page, similar to overview page, is where you have the analytics or graphs based data within your Fiori elements, and these are called analytical page Fiori elements. Then some forms, if you want to create within the Fiori elements, then you can use the form entry page. And then you also have the custom page Fiori elements for customizing the UI using UI5 codes. Okay, so these are what are the different types of Fiori elements we have and for what purpose they are going to be used. Okay, so let's catch up in the next section to continue this discussion on Fiori elements. Welcome back. Let's continue our discussion on SAP Fiori elements, and within this section we are going to start discussing some of the technical aspect of the Fiori elements. So how does actually the Fiori element works? So when you work with SAP UI5 applications, this includes a file called manifest.json file. Now, if you are coming from a development background and you have already created SAP UI5 application in your past, or have worked with some of the development which requires to see the framework or to see the file structure, then you will see this file called manifest.json file. So this is the application descriptor file. Now this file contains a lot of information which is linking the application with its services, or linking the application with its with the data models, or providing the application with data, or the routes, how the routes should be defined, and also the basic information like versioning, or if you have some third-party library to be loaded. So all that information is provided within this manifest.json file, which also links annotations. Now this annotation can be defined in the front-end code of the application. So if you have a folder, now this folder consists of multiple files, and these are all the files which is required within your application. Then one of the file will be also your annotations. So you can also have within your application code the annotations defined, and this is normally present in a Annotation.XML file. So you have this Annotation.XML format file which defines the annotations. Now, if you don't know what are the annotations, annotations are metadatas. So what will be the structure of a standard or a sample Annotation.XML file, we will discuss in a moment. But for now, you can just keep in your mind that these are metadata information. So on top of the data, this information is added. So you have the data and more information about this data. So I will say, okay, if this is the main data, then there are certain secondary data points which are added to this main data, which describes this data. So those are metadata. So annotations are metadata. So within this annotation, we can provide Fiori Elements syntaxes, and based on our requirement, we can use this Fiori element predefined syntaxes. So the first is where we have this annotations defined in the front end of the application. Now this annotation can also be provided within your oData based backend services. So you have this oData based backend services. Now this can be oData v2 or oData v4. So there are two different variations of the data, the version 2 and version 4. So within the oData version 2 and version 4, you can also have your annotation which are part of the oData services. Now how we will create or add this annotation within the oData service, we will see those technical details also in our course. So for now, you can just keep in mind that there are two ways. One is your annotations in your front end code of the application, and annotation in the oData services which are linked to the SAP UI5 application via information which is provided in the manifest.json file. So the manifest.json file is one of the important, I will say one of the most important file within your SAP UI5 project. It links the services which have the annotation, or it also links the annotation directly, or it also defines the Fiori elements which your SAP UI5 application is using. So technically this is the level 1 step to understand how Fiori element app actually works. If you are new to this all topics, then one of the key takeaway is the first is your annotation. So you remember that there are something called annotations, and these annotations are nothing but the metadata, which is the data about the data. What is this metadata and how actually we do that, we'll see in a couple of minutes. Now the second takeaway is that you can also have annotation within your oData services, and this, if you want to create, then we have to do certain development in the backend code of these services. Where the services code is written, then we have to write something there, or we have to add this annotation to the backend service so that we get the same feature. So these are the key takeaway, and these all information is linked to our SAP UI5 application via manifest.json. So if you have previous experience in developing a SAPUI5 application, then you already know the role of manifest.json file. It links multiple resources or services or annotation to your SAPUI5 project. So this is under the hood of a SAP Fiori element application. Okay, now let's go a little further. We will try to understand how a sample annotation file looks like. So I already told you annotations are metadata. So what are the metadata? So there is this data and the information about this data. So the secondary information you can say about this data or additional information about this data are the metadatas. So that is the place where you have your annotation added. So let's try to understand this with two examples. One example is where I have this metadata.xml file. So if you have a oData-based services, then you have a descriptor file, which is metadata.xml file, which is provided. Now within this particular descriptor file, you can see that there are certain syntax of annotation added. So within this metadata.xml file, you will get a description about what a oData service is going to contain. So imagine if this is the oData service, and let's call this oData service product. So this service is going to provide information about the product. Now you can see that this is the entity name is product. So the main entity for which this oData service is providing data is for the products, and it's going to provide property, and in the property you can see what are the fields. It can have multiple property which represent what are the elements or fields this particular oData service will provide information about. So one is the ID, and this is going to be of type EDM string, which is the string based format. And there is also information about if there is any key property, and using the key property you can filter and do operation on this oData service. So all that feature can also be used when you are using oData service. Now the important part for us to focus on is this annotations tag. So there is the annotations start and the end tag, and there is this target. So it says on which particular property this annotation is applied to. So this is the metadata. So the data is the ID here. So this annotation is the metadata for this ID. So it tells or provides some extra information about this ID. And within this annotations, we can see annotation single, where it is having the term com.sap vocabularies common v1 label. So the important thing for us to see here is that this is providing a label to our property ID. And what label? So here in a string format, the value is given, which is product ID. So this ID is having a label called product ID. So this is the metadata which is describing the data or the ID here. So this is one of the example of how a metadata within the annotation can be passed. So this is your metadata.xml file, which is your service descriptor file. And here within the XML notation, we have provided this annotation. So this format is where you have the annotation within the metadata.xml. You can also have all this annotation bundled together in a separate file, which we can call it Annotation.xml. So we can also have that, where similar to this annotations, we can have multiple other annotation, and these are provided in a single separate file, which is linked to the application. And this linking is done with the information provided in our manifest.json file, which we discussed in the last step. Okay, so there is also a second way. So this was the first way where we are using the XML notation to define annotations. Now there is a second way by which we can do this, and this is with the CDS services. Now there is a second way by which you can add annotation to your data you have this CDS view where we are having z underscore product underscore view. So this is the CDS view, and if I want to expose this CDS view, then this can be exposed as a oData based service. So this oData based service will have multiple properties, and one of the properties is ID, and to this ID, if I want to add metadata, like here we have added this product ID, then before this ID I have to just add this annotation as end user text dot label. Then I can provide the label, which is the product ID, and this product ID will be passed as the annotation within this oData based service. So what we have done, we have just added a single annotation and the value for the annotation. So within this annotation, we are having the information of what this property label can be. So this is the metadata, and the label here is provided as product ID. So this is the second way of passing your annotation within your CDS view, which can be exposed and added to the oData based services. Okay, so these are the two ways or two places where you can see the annotations getting added. Okay, so I hope this is clear. So we will just summarize this one more time. So within this section, we discuss about annotations, and annotations are metadata information, and they can be provided in a Annotation.XML file in the front end of the application, or they can be put in your backend services. If you're creating services within the CDS, then I can use the syntaxes of end user label text. So this is one of the sample annotation text and the value of it. So if I just do that, then if I expose the CDS into the oData based services, then automatically annotations will be added to this oData based services. Now we have talked about annotation, which are metadata. Now what the UI does is that UI picks this annotation, and based on these annotations, it creates the UI. So imagine if we have a list here, and the list represent multiple columns. So imagine there are multiple rows and multiple columns here. Then the column name, I can say C1 is having the product ID. Then what will be the label here? If I'm creating an UI and I know that I have to create a list, then the ID need to have a column header name. So I can use this label text here, which is the product ID, within my application UI, and I can just show here. And similar to this product ID, I can pass other label as well. For example, if I have product ID, and I can have the name and so on. And these are the sample annotations, and these information will be used by the UI, and it will give the column header those name which are provided within the annotation. And the other part of that oData services is going to be the data and this annotation. So the annotation will help the UI to understand how the UI need to be created, and the data will actually fill that particular UI. So you can see that we can just use the annotation and the data part provided within the oData services to create a full-fledged application. So this is how it's done, and within this section we got a basic understanding of how the Fiori elements can be used to generate our UI code faster with less development. So here we have just discussed the theoretical aspect. Hands-on section, we will get more clarity about it as well. Okay, so let's continue our discussion on Fiori elements. Welcome back. So before we start the hands-on, I would like to discuss how the hands-on setup will be for us. So we will be having our SAP BTP trial instance, and within this SAP BTP trial instance, we will be creating an instance of SAP BAS, and we are going to create SAP UI5 application using SAP Fiori application templates within this SAP BAS. Now this SAP UI5 application will be getting the oData base services, and there are two ways by which we are going to create this oData service. First is with the help of the CAPM framework. So CAPM is a framework to create full stack application. So we will be creating CDS view within this CAPM framework, and we will be exposing the CDS view, and within this CDS view we will be adding annotations, and with the help of these annotations the SAPUI5 application is going to be populating both the data and the UI aspect, or the metadata will be creating the UI. So both we are going to actually pass within our oData based services, and our Fiori elements will be using the data and the annotation both to create the front end or the UI of the application. Okay, so this is the one aspect or the first category. The second category is where we are going to use the ABAP wrap services. So ABAP RESTful Application Programming Framework also we're going to use. We're going to create CDS view there and add annotation to those CDS views, and this we are going to expose as oData based services, and this services again will be having data and the metadata as our annotations. So these annotations will be used within our SAPUI5 Fiori elements to generate the UI, and the data is going to populate those UI. So these are the two ways where we can see how the annotations can be used to create Fiori element application. Now we will be seeing within the SAPUI5 the front end annotation, and primarily when building your Fiori elements we put the annotations into the backend services, because that is the place where we will be having more simplicity in development and the reusability as well. So we will be primarily focusing our attention on backend based annotation, but still we will be seeing how in the front end the annotations can be added, but our focus will be mostly on the backend based annotation which are primarily used in development. Okay, so this is how our course hands-on exercise will be set up. So let's catch up in the next step where we will be starting our hands-on. Welcome back. In this section we are going to start our hands-on. So the first thing which we will do, which will be the level 1, is going to be using BAS to add a oData based service. So this will be very basic thing. We will be adding a Northwind services, which is a oData based service which is present in the internet, which you can use for experimentation purpose. Now this will be the level 1. We will be dealing here with the UI annotation. We will be adding a small annotation in the UI part where the XML file will be changed, and this annotation we will see that in our SAPUI5 application the annotation will be reflected, or based on this annotation we will see the result in our SAPUI5 app. So this will be the first level 1 where we are just getting started. Now in the level 2 we will be creating our own SAP CAPM application. So CAPM is a programming model which is created by SAP, which you can use to create full stack application. So the CAPM we will primarily use to create our oData based services. We are going to create a oData based service, and this oData based service we are going to have a product details and expose this product data via oData service. So that will be the step 1. Then we are going to create a UI5 application, and then we will be adding annotations within the oData service by adding the annotation in the backend services. So when you add the annotations to the backend services, then automatically the oData service will contain those annotation, and if you are using that oData service in your UI5 app, then in your UI5 app also you can see the changes based on the annotation. So here we are going to spend some time. We are going to start with simple line item, adding line item annotations, and then we will see how you can group together multiple element and see that in the detail page. We will try to experiment a little bit with the navigation also, how if you have a product, and imagine if you have a association here to supplier. So how can you show those supplier details with the product as well? So we're going to spend some time here in the level 2 with the CAPM application. Now in the level 3, we will be going into ABAP wrap. So we are going to use the wrap, which is again a programming model to create full stack application. And this programming model again is by SAP. And in the wrap, we are mostly working with ABAP, or mostly with ABAP and CDS. So this is the two things which we are going to work into, ABAP and CDS. And in the wrap programming model, you will primarily see the use of ABAP and CDS to create full stack application. So again, we are going to use mostly the wrap model or the framework to create this oData service, and we are going to use this oData service within our SAP UI5 app, which will be in our BAS. And this UI5 app again will be Fiori element based app. And here we will see how we can add our annotation to the oData based service using this CDS, which are creating this oData. And then in the UI5 application, you will see those changes. And in the level 4 and level 5, we will be mostly looking into different variations of annotations, like your analytics, and how you can have analytics annotations, or how you can generate analytics by using annotation, and how you can create charts, and how you can create overview pages. So those will be the part of level 4. And in the level 5, we will be seeing how you can create custom cards. So there is also provision of using custom cards and why we need it, how we can do that. So all that we'll see. This is mostly going to be technical aspect, where we are going to add these annotations and see the effect in our UI5 Fiori element application. Now, mostly you will see that in the level 1, we will be working with your front end based annotation. So annotations can be added into multiple levels. So if you have this UI5 app, so this is in your front end. So you have this UI5 app, which is the Fiori element UI5 app. And then you have this backend CDS service, which is in your server somewhere you have, and the oData based service is coming. So the annotations can be added in primarily 3 places. The first is your UI5 application in the front end, where you will have an Annotation.XML file, and this is the place where you can add annotation in the front end. The second is where you can have your annotation added to the oData based service. Now this oData based service can be either generated with your SAP CAPM application, or with your wrap model, where you have your CDS, which is exposed as oData services. Now there is a slight difference between how the syntax is present. Even if both are CDS, in your CAPM application also there are .cds file, and this .cds file is the place where you will be adding annotation. And here in the wrap itself, you have the CDS files or CDS views where you will be adding annotation, and this annotation will be then part of the oData based service. And again, here in the CAPM also, when you add annotation to the CDS file, it's where your service is defined, your oData will get those annotations. Now the syntax here is different in the CAPM CDS and also in the wrap based CDS or in normal CDS views. If you're adding annotation, the syntax will be different or slightly different. So you will see also scenarios where we will try to first create the same thing with CAPM, and I also try to replicate similar things in the CDS with the wrap framework. So you will see the difference in the syntax here. Okay, so I can say here in the second case, there is this CAPM based annotation adding, and then this is the wrap based annotation adding. So if you're seeing any documentation or official documentation, then you will see that there will be different syntaxes present. So based on the UI, how you will add your annotation with the Annotation.XML file, and then also how the CAPM, those annotations can be added, and in the wrap, how this annotation will be added. So the syntax will be slightly different in all the 3 cases, but the properties, the entity name or the field name which you have to specify will be little similar. So this is what we will see as a hands-on part, and you will get more clarity over time. So let's start our hands-on. Welcome back. So we will start with creating new space in our BAS. Now we are using SAP BTP. If you want to know more or learn more about SAP BTP, then I will highly recommend Learn SAP BTP Beginner, Intermediate and Advanced course from UI5C and course catalog. Now coming back to SAP BAS setup, we're going to create a new space, and we can just say create dev space, and here we can name the space as space dev, and based on what kind of application you want to create, you can select that, and you can see small description as well of what that particular flavor or variation will have, the extension, and why you will need that particular flavor or kind. So we will be selecting the full stack cloud application here. You can just select the full stack application here and say create dev space. So it will create the dev space. It will take few seconds before actually it creates dev space. Now for free trial account, you can have at max 2 dev space. Here you can see a small warning that total 2 dev space are allowed, and within this 2 dev space only 1 can be run in a single time. So those are the limitation which you will have in your free trial account, and this is for the current time. Maybe in future these limitations might change. Okay, so we will wait till our space is in the running state, and then we will navigate into that. So our space is in the running state, so I will navigate inside the space, and it will take few seconds to load the BAS environment in our browser. So till the time it loads the BAS environment, I can open the oData service. So the BAS environment is loaded. Now there is some pop-up, and I can just close this. And what we are going to do is we are going to create a CAPM application. So if you are new to the BAS, then I will highly recommend the BAS course from UI5C and course catalog, because we are not going to cover details of what are these navigation panels, how you can use the terminal, all those features which the BAS provides. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into the file, and I can say file, new project from template. Now first of all, we need to check which folder we are in. So if I just open the terminal, and I can see that we are inside the user folder, then here I can either create a new folder and use that particular folder for all my activity. So I can do that as well. So I can basically, or I can go inside the project. So I can say change directory projects. It will navigate me inside the project. So if I say where I am, so I'm inside the home, user and project. Okay, so I can just open that folder from here as well, file, open folder, and I can select user and then projects. Okay, so it will open that particular folder. Now in the meantime, what we can explore is we can explore our oData service. So if I open a new tab and look into our oData service, so this is a version 2 oData service for the level 1 hands-on, and here there are different collections. So first is the products, categories and suppliers. So I can navigate to the products, and this will give me the data for the products. And here you can see that there are bread, and then there are multiple other data. So for the different products we have this data. So I can add format equal to JSON, and this format should have a $sign before it. Then I can read this in a JSON format, which is a little easier to read. So bread, milk, and other products information I'm getting here with the Northwind oData service. And also I can have the metadata.xml. So here I can just have metadata details as well, metadata, and it need to be having a prefix of \. And because the product will not have the metadata, because it's the oData based service which will be having the metadata, so you can see that this is the metadata details, and there are entities like categories, suppliers, and the entity of the product as well. So all the details are present about the service, what the service will have, the entities, and how the relationship are, which are the association between different entities.